Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity for middle market companies, their management teams, and investors. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025, and like you, I'm also surprised to learn that it's June, but here we are. This week we're looking at an outage from leading endpoint detection and response provider SentinelOne and talking about the takeaways from such an event. So, to be honest with you, I haven't seen as much coverage in either the tech or security media space or the larger media space of this story as I might have thought, especially given the history from last summer with Crowdstrike. As a reminder, an error in Crowdstrike's SDLC process caused them to push a faulty update and made millions of computers fall over to the blue screen of death if they were running Windows, somewhat famously causing Delta to have to ground all of their flights. And that lawsuit from Delta against Crowdstrike was actually just given the green light to proceed by a judge on the 20th of last month, so we will continue to see action in the courts on that. So what happened to SentinelOne this week? Well, we know what happened because they've published a full postmortem on their website. It includes both a full timeline and a root cause analysis of the issue. In short, an error in their infrastructure as code architecture pushed a blank routing table into their AWS environment, making the portal essentially unreachable because those pieces of data couldn't be routed. It ultimately resulted in a period of about 5 hours where customers, whether you monitor your own console or you pay a third-party SOC as a service to do it for you, had no visibility or insight as to what was happening on any of the agents deployed across the network. During this time, SentinelOne is careful to note that endpoints were still protected because the agents on those devices were still functional. And that, quote, a core design principle of the SentinelOne architecture is to ensure protection and prevention capabilities continue uninterrupted without constant cloud connectivity or human dependency for detection and response, even in the case of service interruptions of any kind, including events like this one, unquote. That said, I can understand the skepticism given the feeling of flying blind and the echoes of the Crowdstrike event from last year, but I want to emphasize a few things that are worth adding as context to this overall event. While SentinelOne might have had an own goal here with this error, customers weren't left unprotected, and I think it's fair for them to make that point. SentinelOne also got back up and running relatively quickly and have been upfront about these issues that they're facing throughout. In fact, I think their timeline indicates that the engineering team began investigating the error within 13 minutes of the update being pushed, the breaking change entering their environment, and knew exactly what the issue was within 90 minutes of that breaking change being pushed. So it's tempting to write off these tools, these endpoint detection and response tools, as something that adds complexity and can create a false sense of security or actually can be the cause of an incident. And while it is true that they can be the cause of an incident, demonstrated now by both Crowdstrike and SentinelOne, these tools, especially for small and medium businesses, are far more likely to detect and prevent anomalous or malicious activity than they are to be the cause of it. I think we need to ask ourselves whether we're able to staff an engineering team, a security operations team, or PR firm, a communications team that can respond with this type of velocity and comprehensiveness, because the answer for nearly every company, small, medium, or large, including technology firms, is probably not. I'll grant that this is not a good look for SentinelOne, but they handled it as best as anyone could be expected to, including the transparency about their situation and inclusion of design concepts that mean outages like this don't undercut the fundamental value proposition of the tool. So they have made and shared publicly plans to get better, and they are playing with their cards on the table. I think a lot of us could take some lessons from how they handled this set of adversity and put those into play in our own businesses. So whether you choose SentinelOne or Crowdstrike or some other provider, again, I think the benefits far outweigh the risks for this sort of tool, and they are all continuing to look to get better because they know how much scrutiny they're facing. And while incidents like this don't help, responding to incidents like this, I think actually do help build trust and demonstrate progress. From a fundraising perspective this week, we're back in the double-digit billions numbers with more than $12.7 billion in newly committed capital. Most of that, however, comes from L. Catterton, who raised around $11 billion in new fund commitments, including $6.75 billion for its 10th flagship buyout vehicle. We are now up to about $133 billion in Q2 commitments as we come into June, which seems to be enough to delay a good number of the IPO offerings as these top end of the private market maybe look for one more transaction in the private private side before they go public. Plenty of dry powder to support that strategy, and the roll-up plays that are happening underneath it as strong point solution players are gobbled up by platform plays. As a reminder, you can find links to all the articles we talked about in the comment section below. You can find back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.